Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Sport, Recreation and Culture Committee meeting of May 2nd, 2018 to order. I'm going to introduce everybody here tonight. On my far left is Councillor Paul McPherson. Councillor McPherson is not a member of committee, but he's here out of interest, so you won't see him vote, but it's not because he's not interested, it's because he's very interested. And to his right is committee member and Mayor Sandra Easton. And on her right is Councillor Wayne McMillan. Beside Councillor McMillan is Acting Director of Community Services, Shannon McKay. I'm Diane Rinchima, Chair of the Sport, Recreation and Culture Committee and Councillor Ward 1. To my right is Acting Director of Corporate Services, Julie Kirkolis. To Julie's right is Committee Member and Councillor Lynn Timmers. To her right is CAO Mr. Mike Kirkopoulos. To Mike's right is Councillor Tony Bernay. Tony Bernay also is not a member of this committee and is here out of interest. Staff members in the audience, we have Manager of IT Services, John Brown. A table at the back on the far left, we have first Senior Communications Advisor, Carrie Beattie. To her left, Senior Acting Director of Recreation, Culture and Special Projects, Sarah Ain. And to her left, Acting Manager of Community Development, Museum and Culture, Laurie Laird. Are there any declarations of interest from committee members tonight? Confirmation of the agenda. Does anybody have any items on the agenda that they'd like to see changed in order? Okay, so first on the agenda we have a delegation, Mr. Craig Gidley, and also Ms. Karen Golub will be providing an overview of the sport pickleball. So approach the table if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for the pickleball players for showing up and people coming out of interest. I hope it's just for pickleball here. So I've got a short little PowerPoint. If you guys can just kind of read along with me type thing. Okay, so why are we here today? And it's to introduce you to the sport of pickleball. And what is pickleball? Well, it's the fastest growing sport in North America. It's a paddle sport created for all ages and skill levels. It's played on a court 1/4 the size of a tennis court. The net is very similar to tennis. It uses a small racket or a paddle and a plastic ball. Rules are simple and the game is easy for beginners to learn, but can develop into a quick, fast-paced, competitive game for experienced players. It can be played singles or doubles, and doubles being the most common. It has a provincial and national governing body. And why do people like pickleball? Well, it's very easy to learn the basics of the game. It can be enjoyed by all people of all ages and abilities, including parasport athletes. It's great exercise, especially in games with the same skill level, intergenerational. It's addictive and has a fun and social aspect to it. It offers competitive and recreational streams. It is relatively inexpensive to play. It's fast-paced at the higher levels. Considered a lower impact sport. It is a game of strategy, patience, and placement, less on power, strength, and speed. Utilizing a lighter ball that moves at slower speeds reduces the intensity of the sport compared with most other racket sports. And where to play in Niagara? So you'll see these municipalities pretty much all through the Niagara region. And in Lincoln, here we have the Seniors Community Center in Beamsville. It's limited to only those over 55 years of age. The facility ceiling is too low, and members are laying down masking tape to mark the lines on the floor each day they play. The one court is not nearly enough. Members sit and wait for their turn on the court, maybe sometimes longer than they're playing. Extra days have now been added, have been allotted, and participation continues to grow. And in Vineland, Karen personally organizes play at the Vineland Academy of Sports. So other municipalities, I was talking with Jim Zuber in Waterloo. He's the supervisor, leisure and active living at Rim Park. Community services gave me these player participation numbers, and this is just for like the number of players that kind of go through the turnstile each time you come to play. So you can see how the numbers have grown from 2014 to 2017 each year, almost doubling. And in Hamilton, you have 8 community centers. Hamilton Pickleball Club also has play in 2 schools per week during the winter and runs a 6-court outdoor facility during the summer. And 2019 is the expected opening of 12 new outdoor courts at Confederation Park. And in Buffalo Pickleball in 2010, they had 2 locations and 5 courts. Today, 58 locations and 136 courts. This is all just to show just the rapid expanding of the sport. It's growing. The rewards of playing, the rewards of being physically active are endless. One of the key elements is for individuals to choose an activity that offers them a good mixture of enjoyment, social interaction, and movement patterns that they're able to perform safely and confidently. And pickleball does this. Pickleball is for all ages and all athletic abilities. So why do we need to introduce you to this tonight? Well, according to a drawing in Lincoln's 2018 community guide, Angelina Prokic Park will include 2 tennis courts. Municipalities all over North America are taking down tennis courts and replacing them with pickleball courts. We would like to see those 2 courts replaced with 8 pickleball courts. Another great location would be setting up pickleball courts behind the Gretzinger Community Pool. The existing tennis courts are in very bad condition, could be resurfaced and lined for an amazing pickleball facility. There, players would have access to washroom facilities at the pool or senior center. And I've lived in this area for 28 years. I've never seen anybody play tennis there. Tournaments could raise money for the facility maintenance and boost Lincoln's tourism. Niagara's pickleball players travel hours all over Ontario and the U.S., spending their dollars where they play. Many of them are there tonight playing in the Ontario Senior Games Tournament at Rim Park in Waterloo. Or we'd have half of this gallery filled as well. And so I've got a little video just to show you, give you an idea of some play. This is a video of the U.S. Open last year. It's not video of the senior center. I don't know if anyone was wondering that. It's a little different. We don't expect this type of facility, but you'll get an idea of what the play is all about. It's just a condensed video of that link that I'd shown you. He's ready to play? We good? Okay, Karen runs a program, well, for the senior center and also in Vineland. Do you want to say anything, Karen? There we go.
Oops, a daisy.
I'll turn this off.
Is it on? Hi, everybody. I traveled to play other sports, and I decided when pickleball became popular that I wanted to do in my own community, and there was nowhere to do it. And so I did approach Beamsville to resurface their courts, and then now I rent space at Vineland at the cost of tennis courts. And I started with 2 pickleball courts, and now we're at 6 or 8 some nights, and we run that on Thursdays. And now I've got over 36 ladies playing, and then this year we started mixed doubles. I've got ladies there that are in their 70s playing, and I've got younger ones maybe in their 40s. And one woman, she's 72, and she went out and bought a pickleball net and balls so she could teach her kids it in her driveway. That's how multi-generational it is. I've had players come and say, you know, I've never played sports in high school, and I was always last chosen, and they are thriving. I've had one woman, everybody calls her a klutz. She calls herself a klutz. She's never played a sport, and she's so successful in it. And so it's a game everybody can play. And then we started the seniors at the senior center. I've been there 2 years now, and it took a bit. And now we've got a younger group of seniors coming out, and I guess we're younger seniors. And we started with 2 or 3 players, 4, and now we've got so much. And then we went from 1 day to 2 days at the senior center, and you know, we could probably fill 3. And you know, we've got different time slots. We've got 8:30 to 10 for more experience, and then at 10:30 till 12 we go with beginners. So it's really growing, and it's just we're running out of spaces to play. And people all ask me, oh, we're going to play outdoors. We're going to play outdoors. Well, we can't play outdoors, really, because it's finding the spot to play. And I think there'd be a whole group of people that want to play outdoors in the summer.
I've also got my Friday indoors.
So thank you very much for that. I do have a question. Just for clarification, in Vineland where you play, is that on First Avenue?
Yes.
So is that outdoors?
No, it's indoors. We
Okay.
play October till April.
October till April there. Okay. Because they do have outdoor courts there, correct? Don't they?
Yes, they do, but they have a big tennis program, right? And we
Yeah.
have to put the tape down every time, set up nets. It's, very exclusive there for their tennis.
I see. Okay. So are there any questions from committee members? Mayor Easton.
This is quite something, this presentation that you've made to us, because what you're demonstrating, to me at least, is that our town is now made up of a much larger and diverse population than we've ever had before, and people that are prepared to come forward and really make a case for something that's important to them. And that wouldn't have happened before because people were just working all the time. So thank you very much for coming. I've heard about pickleball. I'm curious, though, where this name came from.
No, go ahead. The mic's on your side.
Oh, okay. Well, we did hear it was from someone's dog named Pickles and chasing the ball, and then they called it pickleball.
So I guess, sorry, do you have it, is there, maybe there's
Yep,
a few.
there's actually, I don't know, this is on. There's actually another version too. There's 2 where the wife of the people who invented it called it pickleball, referring to pickle boats. And pickle boats were something to do with like pieces from a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and that's what pickleball is. It's a little bit of tennis, it's a little bit of badminton, and ping pong. They're the three
Okay.
kind of things that it combines. So they're the two. I don't know which is true.
So the question that I really want to ask, I mean, I did want to know a little bit more about that, but it looks like it's also played on a variety of courts, different surfaces. You can play on a wood court if you're playing at the senior center, right?
Yeah, there are better facilities, better courts. I believe there's an acrylic top you can use. It's kind of like different kinds of cars, right? There's better ones. There's, I play on a concrete court. It's horrible on your joints, but got to do it if I want to play. That's where I go. So a hard rubberized floor. I played in Port Colborne at the Vail Center. That's very nice. Hardwood's very nice. Concrete, not so nice.
So if we were going to do something like this, we would clearly have to have some advisory group that would be able to identify what's required. You can easily see how you go from the simplest, resurfaced, not well-used tennis court to, the U.S. Open, the Beamsville Open, especially with the canopy over the top. You can see how quickly you would get to something like that. So what are you really looking for in terms of a surface? Because I don't think I really want you to say, well, we'll take the tennis court, because it doesn't seem like it's size-wise or in terms of all of our joints that it's really going to be the best. So I guess I'm trying to figure out how much of an investment this would be.
Well, I think, are we already committed as a town to invest in Prokich Park, the tennis courts?
Well,
That's what I thought.
I think, Madam Chair, we can, I don't know who would answer that question, whether it would be Mr. Kirkopoulos or Ms. McKay.
Okay, so Mr. Kokopoulos?
Through you, Madam Chairman, why don't I take a stab at answering that question in terms of just highlighting a little bit of the public consultation process we went through and some of the feedback we received as a result. And I want to say, I love the enthusiasm. This looks like a sport I could play. I did play tennis when I was a lot younger. I'm in a lot worse shape now as I head into my mid and late 40s, and so pickleball seems like it was something I can do. Not to say that it's for those of us that are not in great shape, because I see you out there, you probably could definitely school me in pickleball, without a problem. That being said, I think to answer the question specifically to Mayor Easton, and through you and the question that you've asked, we're committed. I think there's ways for us to look at it. I know you highlighted the Beamsville District Secondary School and the tennis courts there, and our staff can speak to the plans we have there. We are looking at converting those tennis courts, and we've reached out to the school board and had a conversation with them as it relates to those courts and how we convert them. I think as it relates to Prokich, we'd have to go back to the community. There's 2 tennis courts that are planned there. Could we see that one turns into a pickleball court, one stays a tennis court, or we have some sort of movable nets and things like that we can have and we can test out with various user groups. I think there's a lot of options for us to look at. I think what you highlight is important, and I'm going to turn it over to our community services staff, who I think can speak to what they're seeing and what they're examining. But there is an ability for us to do some multi-court type efforts out there. I think it's sometimes making sure around programming we don't have any conflict between the various user groups. And so it's determining how do we delineate on a multi-purpose court that has 2 courts, which one will be for tennis and how we look at pickleball. But there is that's my way of saying we'll find a solution if we're so directed through council as it relates to this particular initiative. But I do want to ask Ms. McKay and Ms. Ain to maybe provide some comments, because I know they've been in conversations with the various other agencies and boards.
So Shannon first, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's interesting because there's quite a network through the Parks and Rec associations going on right now where people are looking at converting some of those tennis courts, and they're also looking at whether or not equipment can be mobile enough to switch between the two, between tennis and between pickleball. So we are following those threads. We are connecting with other municipalities to see what they are doing. We certainly see opportunities for potentially repurposing. As you identified, the courts behind BDSS are a lovely location potentially, because there is parking and there are washroom access, and that would be important to us. Ensuring that we appropriately plan and budget for what that cost is something that we'd like to build into our work plan and into alignment with our Parks and Rec master plan, which we are just getting underway with right now. So it's exciting to have you here. It's interesting to the CAO's point about public consultation. You don't always know when the public indicates they would like something, if it's because they think they'd like to try it, i.e. tennis courts would be great because I'd like to be more active and I'd like to play it, or because they're an avid user already. So to see that there is a very strong, avid, active group in Beamsville is very encouraging, and I think both the Associate Director and I would be happy to explore this further as part of our master planning and our work in Prokirch Park as we go forward.
Thank you, Shannon. So Associate Director of Recreation, Culture and Special Projects, Sarah Ain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank Craig and Karen for coming this evening. I've had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with both of them in the last month, and really love their passion for the sport, and also Craig and Karen's company that came with them this evening. We appreciate you being here also. Staff have reached out to the District School Board of Niagara very preliminarily to discuss access to the courts at BDSS as an option. Certainly they're very committed to having community use of their school as well as the facilities surrounding their school, and so they're going through the process right now of taking that request to the superintendent to see if a memorandum of understanding for the town to have access to resurface those would be an option. They have, however, indicated to staff that they are not in a position right now to provide any financing for that project. So while they support the use of the courts for this purpose, they're very interested in the intergenerational component. Certainly their students would be able to also use these courts if they were resurfaced for pickleball use. And we also see opportunities for members of the senior center to come over and participate with those youth, which is great. So lots of teaching opportunities there. They are not in a position to provide finances towards this project with the impending closure of the school.
Interesting, thank you. Madam Mayor, does that answer your question?
It's always difficult. I mean, we did have a delegation from another group not too many months ago that were very, very passionate about tennis. I don't recall whether they were from Lincoln or whether they were from Grimsby. It may have been a mixed group. So I guess just continuing on the thread of the tennis courts at the school, how many pickleball courts would that accommodate? Do you know the space that well?
Yes, I do. They have 4 tennis courts. You could, at minimum, put 8 pickleball courts.
Okay. All right.
Possibly 12. And when you talk about numbers, you play singles tennis, you play doubles pickleball times 8 courts or 12 courts. You can imagine how many people are playing at once. And when there's an active, growing group of people playing pickleball, they'd be filled all the time.
Right. So, Madam Chair, obviously the staff are willing to look into this, which is great. And then the costs, et cetera, would come forward. Do we have any idea preliminarily how much it would cost to resurface the tennis courts?
So I'm not sure, I guess is that question for you, Shannon? Okay, thank you.
We have actually looked into it, and early estimates are it could be upwards of around $40,000.
$40,000, okay. Well, that's certainly a substantial amount of money, there's no question about it. Okay, well, that puts it into perspective. So I'm pleased that the staff are going to continue to work with your group. I think that's really a good place to start, and who knows? You may have some ideas about how that can be funded. I don't know, but I'll leave that with you in the conversation, but certainly I'll be interested to hear progress as it goes along.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so regarding funding, the first idea came was when I saw that little picture of the tennis courts already going in at Prokich Park. Nothing really about the senior center or anything like that. So the funding, you know, that's going to be done. So I would even like to say for today to convince you to put pickleball courts in instead of tennis courts. That'd be the ultimate for us. Secondly, to accommodate the tennis players, maybe we can do one court tennis, and then you could put 3 or 4 pickleball courts. That'd be an option. You can also line the tennis courts with pickleball lines. Tennis people can play maybe at certain times, and then pickleball players can play. Nets can be accommodated. They're different sizes, or I'm sorry, not different sizes, different levels, like adjustable heights for tennis courts. There's kits you can buy that bring down the tennis net a little bit. So it can be accomplished, but everybody's taking away tennis courts. So that's why we're trying, you know, let's go with pickleball. You know, it's.
And can I add one point?
Sure.
When you look at any gym, from Brock University to McMaster, they've got 8 different lines on a court. They're playing badminton, they're playing volleyball, they're playing basketball, they're playing all kinds of different sports, and athletes manage to not go out of bounds or go onto other courts. So having 2 different lines isn't that much to ask. If you're going to stay with the tennis courts, you still can put pickleball and let both play if that's an option.
So there's flexibility options. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. I have Councillor Timmers next.
Thank you, Chair Ujima, through you to the delegation. Thank you very much for coming in tonight. I absolutely did not know anything about pickleball, so I'm so glad you had the video because that helped me a lot. I'm not a sports person, but I think I actually could maybe do pickleball a little bit. But I think all my questions were answered. I would just like maybe the committee to direct staff to come back to next committee meeting with maybe some costing or some further ideas on how we can accommodate this request. So do we need a motion for that? Is there a motion?
I think there is a
already?
motion. It's being amended. Okay, that's good.
That would be my recommendation. Hopefully the committee supports that, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers, and thank you to staff as well for doing the research that you've done already to get us to this point. I have Councillor McPherson next. Oh, sorry. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for being here. It's like Lynn, I had no idea what pickleball was. My first reaction was, is it like squash or racquetball or jai-alai? And obviously there is a world of difference between the pickleball and those other sports. I did have a question, and it was directed to the conversion of courts and a building of new courts, but I think that's already been discussed around the table this evening already. So, and obviously the staff have already taken some action on doing some of the research that would need to be done in order for us to make a decision on how to proceed with this. So thanks very much for being here, and we will certainly look to a motion coming from the chair on this particular item. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. And now I have Councillor McPherson and then Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the delegation for coming. And I guess this is, I see my old buddy Brian Benoit over there, and it looks like this is where old broken down hockey players go to play. And I guess I'm headed that way too. But just a couple of thoughts here, and you know, I think, you know, when we're looking at our plans for parks and for accommodating all of our residents, you know, maybe this is one of the areas that we need to look at, you know, and that's down the road. I get that, but I think we need to take, the passion that we've got here. I don't know if you are an association or if you're just a bunch of folks that get together and play pickleball right now. And maybe that's something to think about is, to get a membership of some kind to show the numbers. But, I think that, there's two things I see here. One is we've got passionate local residents that want to be active and, want to get out and, play and socialize. And I think we need to nurture that. So, in the short term, what can we do? And maybe that's the Councillor Timmer's idea. And then in the longer term, does this become part of our, I'll throw it out there, the Jordan Park, and does this become part of that plan where we have 8 or 10 or 12 pickleball courts 2 or 3 years from now? And I know you need something to do today, but, I think, as you see, there's a process here and there's, budgets and things that we need to take into consideration. But I think that, and I should say that I'm also getting it from Craig and Helen Louie, that, hey, we need to start thinking about pickleball courts. So, I would support, a short-term solution, and then, more importantly, longer-term, what is the plan? Because I did sit here the night that the tennis group came, and they were passionate, and they, we don't have any tennis courts, so, to convert tennis courts, I'm not sure that's the solution. I think we need pickleball courts, but, I think that, both should be accommodated in our longer-term plans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Hearing a lot of support tonight for this. Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Chair Rinjima. So to the delegation, thanks for coming. Your passion came out loud and clear, and your team out here supporting you. I certainly have heard a lot about pickleball from all my friends that are retiring down in Florida and Arizona, and I didn't realize it was so passionate up here. So I'm glad to hear the desire. And as Councillor McPherson alluded, if Brian Benoit's playing racquetball or playing pickleball and he's got any of that passion that he had out in the rink or in the baseball diamond, it's a competitive sport, I'm sure. But just more seriously, you're coming at a perfect time. I mean, there's a document that's just been printed this week, and from that document, we're investing as a municipality, we're investing $220,000. And we're investing that $220,000 to identify the development of a master plan that will outline the priorities of development of recreation, sports, parks, and cultural programs for our municipality. This plan will identify community needs and determine how to collectively create and address gaps. And residents will have significant opportunities to provide input. So this is just hitting us now, and we're going to be probably putting out that RFP very, very shortly in the next month. But to speak to your comments about Prokich Park, and as a Ward 2 councillor that was involved a year ago, June, in all that engagement from the community up there, I can tell you that we had mixed people that wanted 4 tennis courts. Some didn't want any. Shannon can allude to the fact that we had a whole community of people that wanted bocce ball. And one of the issues that we have when we're building a community neighborhood park is that we want to make sure we're touching all demographics, from the 4-year-old who wants to swing on a swing to the adult senior that just wants to go out and push his grandchild in a stroller and sit under a park bench and enjoy the afternoon. So some of the difficulties are those user groups. And so, as Councillor McPherson alluded, you have organizations or associations like Bocce Group people that want that space, and yet we have to balance the fact that it's a community neighborhood park, and when people want to use that space, you've got an organization that wants to come in and roll out the red tape and nobody else can use it. So there's some balancing acts, but I see a real opportunity here for some short term. That space up at Prokich Park, if you know anything about it, it's almost a 10-acre parcel. It's a huge opportunity. It'll be our biggest park in the town of Lincoln. there is huge opportunities, as Councillor McPherson alluded, coming in Jordan. We've got the Canada Summer Games coming in 2021. And we're going to be spending a lot of money down there. So I think there's some real opportunities for some short-term looks and some long-term opportunities. So I just think the timing is perfect. You know, can we have you a pickleball court next week? Probably not. But I think if we hang on with these engagements, we can look at some short-term and some long-term solutions. So thanks for coming.
So one thing for sure, it really does help when you come forward and explain to us what you've been doing and show such enthusiasm, because there's a lot going on in the community and a lot going on in Niagara. And so really good idea of you to come forward and be active and let us know what you're doing. So we really appreciate it. If there are no more questions, I have a motion.
We ask questions from the peanut gallery?
Typically we don't.
Can I pass them forward?
I think you should.
Regarding whether we can have pickleball courts tomorrow, we could. Let's paint some lines on the floor of the arena, and we could have 6 pickleball courts. That'd be cheap. You know, I'm not sure how paint goes, if it would go through the ice, how that would work. I'm not sure. I play at the Hague Bowl in St. Catharines. There's 6 courts on the arena floor.
Okay, so thank you for that, because you mentioned that earlier on. We were chatting before the meeting began, and that was in the back of my mind when you were speaking. So Sarah Ain would like to speak to that, what you just brought up. Thank you, Sarah.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Craig, for bringing up the Fleming Center as a really viable option for pickleball. Although concrete, and you've identified this earlier, is not the preferred surface, it certainly is a viable option for a short-term solution for pickleball. Currently, the Fleming Center is undergoing some routine maintenance between the seasons. Ice has just come out recently, and we have some maintenance that's happening on the floor as we speak. And so as soon as that maintenance is complete, we will certainly be investigating putting down some lines of some sort. I'm not sure that paint will be a solution, but taping and portable nets, we have certainly heard that that's an option as well. So we'll be looking at putting together some programming for that in the next couple of months for the entire community, including youth and children.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. That's wonderful. And you had a question that you're bringing forward?
No, I answered it.
Okay, super. So we have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan and seconded by Mayor Easton that the delegation presented be received, and then the motion has been amended pursuant to Councillor Timmer's suggestion, so that the delegation presented be received, and this is the amendment, that Sport, Recreation and Culture Committee direct staff of community services to investigate options, costs, and locations associated with the possible development of pickleball courts. So that sort of encapsulates everything we've just been talking about, short-term and long-term, I'd say, so that's good. Any questions or comments to that motion from committee? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, so that motion is carried. Thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. So we'll just be carrying on with the agenda. If you want to stay, you can stay. If you want to step out, it's up to you. Thank you very much again for coming. Okay, next on the agenda is number 6, correspondence. We have no correspondence. Number 7, Reports, first report CM 1806, an information update regarding the Val Fleming Butterfly Garden. So I think we may have some community members and people in one particular person here too regarding this report. So I'm wondering if somebody can speak to it briefly. Would you like to, Sarah? Thank you.
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, this report outlines an update on the Val Fleming Butterfly Garden project in partnership with Ontario Green. And staff have met with Ontario Green and Ms. Fleming to discuss the project and moving it forward, and have agreed to a 3-phased approach in order to get the project off the ground. The first phase of the project will be this fall in October, the 13th. It will be a tree planting event that will be hosted in the community, and all residents will be invited to participate in that. Those trees will be planted along the fence line in Serena Park, and basic signage will also be installed. Beyond that, we've committed to looking at how the butterfly garden can be incorporated into the development of Serena Park, which at this time is unknown and will be examined through the master planning process. So the interested parties were very amicable to that solution, and we feel that it's continuing to keep the momentum going for the project at this point in time.
Thank you, Sarah. So would you mind just clarifying for me, so the first phase is the tree planting event, October 13th. The second phase, and could you step out the second phases for me?
Through you, Madam Chair, the second phase would be installation of shrubbery and native plants next spring. And the third phase, which is really the phase we need to incorporate into the master planning process, includes hardscaping. So that would be benches, a potential of a small bridge over the ravine that exists there, as well as educational components. So the larger scale items, we would want to wait until we know what else would go in the park, as to make sure we're spending the dollars effectively and ensuring proper fit in the park.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So the way I'm seeing it, the plan is to start October 13th, plant along the back, move forward in the spring with shrubs, and then the master plan process, as you just said. So, thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? Mayor Easton?
Madam Chairman, this is, I have a little bit of knowledge of this project. I think it's going to be quite an exciting addition to the park. I'd just like to make a comment about predetermination. It's my understanding that the park, this park, the Serena Park, had a predetermination through the fundraising activities that went on when the Fleming Center was built. And so I know we talk a lot about public consultation around the use of parks, but I want to make sure that the fact that this park was set out to be a community park where families could come together and enjoy not only what was going on in the Fleming Center, but also the activities in the park, are not going to be lost through a consultation process with the new residents in that area. So I just want to clarify that, because when the master plan is done, it speaks to finding out, as you did, as was done by staff in Prokage Park, what those people wanted. But there's already been, as far as I understand, so I need to have that clarified, a predetermination on how this park was to be used. So this activity fits in very well with families coming there, spending time, and having a passive and very, very educative experience. So that's the first question that I have. And then I just have a question on the drawing on Appendix C. If I could just have the orientation. I don't know where north is on this.
So,
is that north? Okay.
Yeah, north is the top of the page, right? Yeah.
Okay, very good. So that's really my question.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. So I believe Sarah Ain, do I have that right? Are you going to speak to the history and any predetermination
I will, yes.
of the park? Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor. The RFP that was issued today for the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan lays out a number of key documents that the chosen consultant will have access to in terms of their planning efforts. And one of those documents is the 2010 Parks Plan that was developed for a number of our community parks. And one of those was, it did identify Serena Park as one that we need to look at. And so they will have access to any previous consultation that has been done in the community with relation to parks, including Serena Park. So anything that has been previously facilitated by staff or a consultant, they will have access to that information in order to build on how to appropriately execute an action plan for that park.
Okay, so that tells me what the context of that consultation is going to be. But can you tell me whether or not there is anything in those documents that outlines the purpose of this park?
So I would refer that to our director.
Through you, Madam Chair, I've not seen a document which outlines previously Serena specifically. The Parks Master Plan that I've reviewed addressed Hillary Ball, Ashby, and Prokritch. So if there is a document, and I think that the CA might like to comment, we'd like to see that as well.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in the last 2.5 years, I've also tried to review a number of documents as it relates to Serena, as we look at, what is the future of that park? What do we do with that particular location? How do we engage the community? And I think it's a good thing that we're going out with this Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Master Plan. I think the only thing that I'm familiar with was a previous ask or a previous contribution that was offered to the town as it relates specifically to a skate park in that particular area. And I think at that particular point in time, what was shared or what was described is that particular element of that site would be something that would be dealt with when Serena Park was developed. But there was really no documents that, from a staff perspective, we're aware of that point to specifically consultation and anything else people would want there, other than I think most good parks, recreation, and cultural master plans and the principles that we adopt in these plans will set out what are the criteria for community parks and what should be in those community parks. And of course, we're going to balance both community-wide consultation and community-wide comments with those in the specific neighborhood where people, may not want as many people attending that particular point. But the benefits of having a community center in your community is that people will see it as a place to connect. People will see it as a place to come. From my perspective, that's really the only, I think, kind of historical information that I have that I can add to any sort of consultation or commitment that was made either by the community or by the town to what is our current Serena Park plan.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I would, thinking back in 2010, that was just the beginning of sort of when the whole Lincoln Square development was going to be constructed. Serena Park didn't really kind of exist then when that 2010 master plan was there. And also, to my recollection, I don't think we've ever even decided to call it Serena Park. We just started kind of calling it that way. But I don't think it's ever been actually decided that that should be the name of the park. So I have Councillor McMillan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on what the mayor was saying, that I don't think there was any document concerning that particular park. There certainly was or there were conversations around this table by the council members when we were discussing it, and it always came out as being to be a passive park, and there wasn't any consultation about that particular park because there was no community there yet. this was going on before the houses were even built in that area, so there was no consultation, but it certainly was a passive park. It had not been given a name, you're right, absolutely. And the notion of the skate park was that became a possibility. There was no promise, as I remember, that that's where it was going to be taken, or going to be built, but it certainly was a possibility.
All very true. Thank you, Councillor McMillan. I have Councillor McPherson next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, I think this is a wonderful thing that a group has come forward and you know, obviously put some money forward, and also the work that has been done in our parks with the trees and the planting of trees and all of that is a absolute positive when looking at our parks. My question may be along the lines of the mayor's thought process is, you know, for the timing of it, thinking that the Serena Park is not going to be built till 2021 potentially. So you've got a garden that's been put in a park and it's all by itself, and everybody's thinking, okay, here comes the rest of the park. So, you know, I don't know what the optics are for that. And I also agree with the whole public process. And, you know, we've been very, very good and very, very focused on a full public process when we invest in a park or a community or whatever it is. So, you know, I think there is a home for the butterfly garden, but, you know, are we getting ahead of ourselves, both from a timing of the potential park there in 2021 and to include it in a design of the entire park for the public process?
Okay, thank you, Councillor McPherson. So 2 questions that I have to that. Did we hear 2021 as the possible date earlier on? I'm not sure who I should direct that to. Oh, okay, thank you. And the other comment, and I guess a question as well, is I believe through this committee we did commit to the investment of the butterfly garden, that it also went to council several months ago. Maybe I can ask for clarification on that. Okay. Sarah, can you confirm or deny?
Through you, Madam Chair, this did go to council in the fall of 2017 and was a commitment the council made. So staff are looking to move this project forward at this time.
Okay, so tonight this is an information report, is that right? Be received for information, so you're bringing this forward to let us know the steps and the phasing of a decision that we made earlier on. Councilor
So if I may, and I don't think that's my challenge, that we aren't going ahead with it. My question is the timing, and are we doing what we should be doing? I guess I'm just thinking about the folks at Serena in the surrounding area, and you know, if we get public input that, you know, we want a skateboard park and we want a swings and we want, you know, all this because it's a younger demographic, I don't know. But I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, you know, we need to sort of take a step, I don't know about back, but we need to think about the public process here and think about the rest of the park being built 2 years from now.
Thank you, Councilor Mr.
Just a comment.
Thank you.
From a non-committee member.
You still have a voice.
But interested.
Interested, that's right. All right, so, Mike Kirkopoulos, can you comment on, so I just...
Madam Chair, you're looking at me, so I will comment.
Yeah.
I suspect you're waiting for me to comment. I mean, I think what the council is trying to say is what we need to do is ensure we're managing expectations, we're communicating appropriately and clearly. And I think why we're doing a multi-phased project is we will be further along when we get to phase 2 and 3 of this particular, you know, gift that we've been given. Both the Fleming family and Ontario Green and Liz, who's here, will be stakeholders when we start start doing that consultation, and I think we'll be very much involved. And I think the location we've selected and the size of that particular location will not inhibit us in terms of what we look to do, in the central part of the park. And so I think, we've gone through, I think, a lot of those machinations ourselves as staff as we've looked at this particular project. So, duly noted, I think, some good comments, but I think that's why we have looked at a kind of a phased approach, so that, we're very clear of what this is and what this gift is, and what it is not, and what it means to the broader park development.
Thank you, Mr. Pathlis. Any more questions from committee members? Okay, I have a motion moved by Mayor Easton and seconded by Councillor McMillan that report CM 1806 regarding an update on the Val Fleming Butterfly Garden initiative at Serena Park be received for information. Any questions or comments to that motion? All in favor? Okay, so that motion is carried. Thank you for the update. Good night. Thank you. Next on the agenda, CM 1807, an information update regarding the program guide development, also known as, aptly named, a name with a nice hook, Lincoln Playbook. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor McMillan that report CM 1807 regarding the development of the Lincoln Playbook be received as information. So everybody's read the report. Are there any questions for staff regarding the Lincoln Playbook and the establishment of this recreational guide? I believe it's, well, I won't explain. If there's any questions, Madam Mayor.
Madam Chair, I just would like clarification on whether or not this book would be seen by new businesses or potential new residents as kind of a marketing tool that provides a lot of information about everything that you would be hoping to find in a community. Is that what the expectation is with the Lincoln Playbook? Because that was always the impression that I had about the community guide, that it was something that you could pick up anywhere and say, this looks like a really great community to live in.
Okay.
Is that the case with this?
That's a good question. And so I have, Sarah would like to speak to that. So the differentiation between what we have established in the Community Services Guide and what the role of the playbook will be.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Lincoln Playbook will focus on specifically the content that the Community Services Department works on, so recreation programming, arts, culture, heritage activities, promoting our green spaces in our parks, which we'd love to do more of, as well as community events and facilities. We'll also have a number of features in the playbook to do with the upcoming master planning process, complete communities content, as well as information about our municipal and Whipple grant and partnerships. So it is specific to the community services portfolio.
So does that mean that it's not, that there will be other mechanisms, or how should I interpret a gap that could exist if we move in this direction?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know Carrie would like to speak. Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Mayor. Yes, so the playbook will be specific to community service, so focusing on a very target audience. And what we're looking at, Mayor, coming out of the economic development strategy, tourism, it's an opportunity for us to actually look at our community guide and look at what we can do to actually market our community a bit differently. So not that it'll be eliminated, but looking at a better opportunity. So then focusing our recreation for that particular audience. That's not to say that wouldn't be part of what this new guide would look like. But since I've started, we've been sort of looking at what this guide could do, its usage, and I think there's some great opportunity coming out around how can we market Lincoln a little bit differently. And so there's a bit of a few moving targets right now for it, but I will reinforce to council that we will still have an opportunity to promote our community, but maybe just in a different product.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any more questions from committee members? Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor McMillan that report CM 1807 regarding the development of the Lincoln Playbook be received as information. Any questions or comments to that motion? All in favor? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you. Next on the agenda, report CM 1808, an information update regarding the Whipple grant recipients. I think we have a couple of grant reports in a row, so maybe somebody could speak to that, because I know there's been a considerable amount of that work that went into this and some discussions. Laurie, could you please speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We have, first up is the Whipple Grant, which is our funding that has been allocated towards beautification of downtown Beamsville areas. So it's an annual grant that we distribute. This year we have about $1,125 that was gathered from the interest from the money that was bequeathed from Mrs. Whipple. We had 3 individual organizations apply, and we have allocated the funding as listed in the report. I did meet with Councillor McMillan and Councillor Timmers to help decide how we would allocate those funding. And if I can speak to the following report, which is the municipal grant allocation, again, that's the annual $18,000 that is approved in the budget that we allocate according to the listing here, the criteria is what I'm looking for. The criteria in the report, we had a number of organizations apply for that funding, and again, the 3 of us met and discussed how we would allocate those fundings that you can see listed in the report. We do have plans to revamp this to make it a little bit clearer again, and the criteria clearer and more defined, with a simpler process for application. This year, one different thing is particularly with both grants, actually, I think we'll do is ask for some reports from those that receive the funding, so we can ensure that the funding was used as they indicated and that it was used actually. So we have some information and reporting on how the funding that we allocated was utilized by those organizations.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. And so the report also states that there's going to be a fulsome review of the municipal grant application process plan for 2018. So there's further discussion to be had regarding the criteria. Okay, thanks. Questions or comments from committee? Mayor Easton?
Madam Chair, I'd like to refer to the Literacy Council of Niagara West on page 17 and the purpose of their funds. And the question that I have, which is a question that I asked last year, is why does the Literacy Council have to make an application for funding when this is a town property and all town properties that need this kind of maintenance fall under the maintenance contract?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Laurie, I'm wondering, this is just, the answer to this may be just this, what we've always done, but no? Okay.
A little bit more than what we've always done. They have indicated that the funding is more for a little bit more of prep for the maintenance before the town comes in and cuts the lawn. So they are doing some raking and organizing, deadheading of the plants and different things. So they do a little bit of their own maintenance before we come in and do a little more detailed maintenance, if I may, before the town comes in and does their work.
Well, Madam Chair, I would wonder why it's necessary now to do that. I can understand why that may have been done in the past. However, the standards by which work is done here at the town have changed considerably over the last 2 years. This current contract, I think we noted when it came to Infrastructure Committee, was deemed to be the most comprehensive contract that we'd ever had or had had in some time. And so I do question the necessity for this. The work definitely needs to be done, but for an organization to apply for additional money when the town is already responsible for the property does not make any sense to me at all. This should be treated just like the Lincoln Center or any other property?
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
As far as I'm concerned. So I'm wondering why the contract wouldn't cover that.
So who would like to answer that question? I think it's kind of a good question. Okay, so Councillor Timmers was involved in the.
I'm not staff speaking to this, but just to Mayor Easton, through you, Chair, that was definitely a conversation that we had around the table. And I think this was going back when there wasn't the services, that wasn't getting done what they wanted to do. And they wanted to have special gardens around the building. So they did the gardens themselves. And I don't know if that's, I understand what you're saying. It is a town-owned property. This goes above and beyond what the town services are providing. They want to put in special gardens, and they have their community gardens as well. So it was all kind of tied to that. But I think moving forward, we definitely need to revisit this next year. Like what's being provided by the contract that we have in detail. Do they need these extra gardens?
Madam Chair, I'm not questioning what they're doing. I'm not questioning the gardens. I'm only asking the question, why does the contract not cover every property? Because at the same time, as I discovered 2 years ago, that this was not being done, that this building wasn't even clear to people who owned this building, we were also looking at really substantial gaps in terms of the maintenance of other town buildings, including Bennett Hall. And all of that has been dealt with. So I think this may be a bit of a hangnail here, but I think we need to get it sorted out through the CAO, whether or not those contracts are expected to be included.
Yeah, so I want to say thanks very much to Councillor McMillan and Councillor Timmers for going through this with staff and coming up with the work that they did. And as the report states, there is going to be a further review of the criteria. So all that, I think, will, in the end, it's great to have these questions come up because this can be considered during that review process. And I have the CAO who would like to speak next. If Councillor Timmers, are you done? Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. So I have our CAO and then Councillor Brunet.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I'm going to let Shannon, I think, start answering that question. And then if I could just make a couple of comments relative to the mayor's comment around some leftover hangnails, because I agree with her on that, and this is probably one of them. So,
through you, Madam Chair, I apologize. I can't speak to what was discussed last year and said last year, so I'm going to do my best to answer what I know right now, which is that we still have a number of properties. The maintenance for all of our properties are divided between the contractor and town staff. And the details of this particular ask, I'd have to sit down with staff to understand how that delineates from those services that either our contractor or our own staff are providing on that site, and I'm happy to do that. I don't know enough right now about those differences and whether or not this is our contracted site or whether we have a crew that we're sending out as part of our seasonal to look after that. But I'm happy to look into that.
Thank you, Shannon.
The garden, I understand very well what this garden does. This garden is one of the tools that are used to teach language skills, reading and writing and interpretation. So it is a very important tool. So I'm fine with that answer, and it'll get sorted out, I'm sure. But it is a very important tool for expanding people's literacy skills. I understand that. I just would like the town, when it has responsibilities, to fulfill them. And so that people that are part of that process always know exactly what they can expect, and not having to worry about raising money when they really need to be worrying about their clientele. That's my point.
Thank you. Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Chair Rinjema. Just looking at this report, I'm not on the committee, but I completely concur with the mayor. I mean, when you look at the chart where it says the purpose of the funds that the Literacy Council is requesting the funds for, it specifically says the funds are used to hire a groundsperson to maintain the garden surrounding the house. And if this is a town property, it should be part of the contract that is looking after all the facilities around the municipality, including this one. So to me, it's something that's been falling through the cracks over the years, and I completely agree with the mayor. I don't think our contract that we just awarded should be not looking after this. I believe it should be part of that contract. Quite clearly, it indicates what the funds are going to be used for, and that's hire a groundsperson. Well, why do they need to hire a groundsperson if our contract should be looking after it? Thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if I can ask this right now, but does the contract cover what they're proposing to use a grounds person to cover? And if not, maybe we can get that answer later on.
To you, Madam Chair. I think my simple answer is yes, and my subsequent answer specifically to this question is, as Ms. McKay highlighted, between our staff and our contract, all of our facilities are taken care of. This one may have fallen through that kind of proverbial crack, and you know, I apologize for that. I think, you know, we should be looking after all of our facilities. We've made significant progress in the last 2 years, and I think that's a testament to the work that staff are doing. And so we will take that away in this particular case. And I can assure you this will be the last year that we are sitting here having this particular conversation on this particular property.
Yeah, so I don't think there's any need to apologize. It's all part of moving in the right direction, and everybody's put a lot of work into this. So good questions, and I don't know if we need is that direction to staff? What do you think? What does the motion say? It's going to be reviewed sometime during 2018. So for this year, is it necessary to establish that this money go towards something that's already going to be taken care of in a contract for this year? I guess that's the question. Councillor McPherson?
I guess my question is, how far down the road are we? I mean, you know, are these people already thinking that they are getting this money, and maybe the right answer is to include in the motion a review of the procedure to potentially exclude town-owned properties, and then, you know, there can be a conversation with the folks at the Learning Center this year that says, we're going to take your property over next year and do it the way you expect it to be done. So just, you know, I don't know how far down the road we are now.
I think you're right, Councillor McPherson. I think this needs more discussion. So is there an amended motion happening? Is that?
Madam Chair, my intention isn't to derail this, and I think that both Councillor McMillan and Timmers worked with the information that they had available to them. I was surprised to see this on the list again, so I've made my point, and I'm quite satisfied that the staff have a process for examining it. If the money doesn't need to be used, it certainly isn't going to be wasted. They have many things, I'm sure, to do with additional money. I can live with that if the rest of the committee can, and it'll get sorted out.
I guess ideally in the long run, it would be nice to see them, if they were going to apply for funding, that they could concentrate more on something that, as you said, is used for education and not necessarily have it spread out over maintenance costs. And so it's good to hear that people will be discussing this and that it'll be straightened out. I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers, seconded by Councillor Sandra Easton, that Council approve the allocation of $1,125 from the Whipple Trust Fund and direct staff to dispense 100% funding to the local community groups as outlined in Report CM 1808. Okay. Comments or questions to that motion? All in favor? So that motion is carried. Thank you. So technically, the next report on the agenda is CM 1809 regarding the municipal grant recipients. Do we have a motion for that as well? I have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan and seconded by Sandra Easton that council approve the allocation of $18,000 as recommended for the 2018 municipal grant program and direct staff to disperse 100% funding to local community groups as outlined in report CM 1809. Comments or questions to that motion? Sandra.
Madam Chair, on page 21, the item under Niagara Nature Tours, as far as I understand it, Niagara Nature Tours is a private enterprise. Just if we could just have an explanation of what of how this fits the criteria.
Laurie?
Through you, Madam Chair. We actually, Niagara Nature Tours did not receive any funding this year. We did indicate because it was a private company that they did not fit into the criteria. So that is one of the organizations that we didn't deem qualified, and they did not receive any funding.
And so they understand that for the future?
When we inform the groups of whether or not they received some, we will definitely indicate that. And we'll also let them know that we are looking at changing and updating the grant policy. So if they have something else that maybe fits the new criteria, they're certainly welcome to apply.
And Madam Chair, further to that, the Village of Hope request for $3,500. Was that, were they denied because of the amount, or was there, if there was money, would they have been eligible?
We felt that they didn't really, again, fit into the criteria, which was more recreation culture based, and that this being more of a community support thing, it didn't really fit the criteria as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? So all in favor? Thank you. That motion is carried. Last report on the agenda, CM 1808, a report regarding public Wi-Fi at community parks. So are there any comments or questions? Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Regima. When I first read this report, I wasn't really sure if I supported having Wi-Fi at the community parks, just because I feel when you're at the community park, maybe you should put your device down and enjoy what's going on and the environment. And, you know, you've got Wi-Fi, you can't escape it anywhere. And I love Wi-Fi, I'm all for it, but I just couldn't quite buy into the community park idea. And my other thoughts were, if this is a pilot for 3 years and it's free, people start to rely on it and want it, and then when it's gone, how much is it going to cost us to continue providing that service? That would be a question. And I don't know if anyone here could answer that, but that's kind of where my thoughts were going on this. So is there someone that you would...
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. Sarah Ain.
Through you, Madam Chair, those are great questions and certainly ones that staff have also wrestled with. In terms of continuing the service beyond the 3-year pilot, it's at this point we couldn't identify what the cost would be 3 years from now because the market could certainly change for that. But there would be a cost to the town. We are working with the proposed internet service provider that you've read about in this report to identify what those costs would be. I may be able to pass it over to our manager to speak to what you think the costs may be.
Thank you. Through you, Ms. Chair. excuse me, the cost is going to depend on how we build the infrastructure. So we could build the infrastructure for dozens of residents that are taking a walk in the park on a Friday afternoon. We could build the infrastructure for, let's say, a ball tournament when we talk about the Beamsville Lions Park, or we could talk about infrastructure that would support the Canada Day at Charles Daly Park. We could have several hundred residents at a particular event at once. If we build a smaller infrastructure, it would mean large events would be underserved. If we build the infrastructure for large events, then we're talking about thousands a month for a park. So we still have to have all those discussions with the contractor and figure out what level of infrastructure we're building in order to really nail down the actual costs going forward, year 4 and beyond.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess that was that answers some of my questions. Most people have data on their phones as well, so I don't know. I think it's great that they're offering this for free, but I guess I have some doubts if we really truly need it in our parks. But maybe someone else can give me more information to help me understand why we need it. Thank you.
Shannon, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. I thought the same thing initially, and I started thinking about how it's just become an expectation in a lot of public places whether it's a library, whether it's the Fleming Center, the museum, an airport, those public places. And when we started doing our reading and research into what others have done, some communities have adopted, and this is more so what I've read in the U.S. or some major cities, Wi-Fi in parks, just to move away from hard copy and to allow content to be digital. So providing trails and maps and activities, providing information on art in public spaces or culture as an example. And that got me thinking sort of creatively about, Wi-Fi in open spaces, like not just in the museum that we will build, but in the site itself. And if a visitor came to the site in Jordan and not only could learn about the museum, but could also learn about the connecting trail and the 20-mile creek and where they could go with it. So I think this is absolutely being positioned as a pilot with 2 specific parks, both which we know get a high visitorship for different reasons. One is a park by its sheer location, which attracts a lot of people, and one is a park sort of with tournaments and events. The other audience that I think about are the parents who go to the games and are watching the children or looking up the stats or, doing something online. I think we will learn from a pilot project. It is somewhat seasonal because we're not going to see a lot of people sort of in the parks with their devices in the middle of winter. So the 3 years is sort of, it seems like a long time, but in fact it's, when you think about the seasons. So I was with you initially when I sort of thought about and read about it, and then when I started investigating what others have done, it's kind of interesting and kind of innovative in some areas. So.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.
Mike would like to speak as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the comment that I would make is, when we look at the exercise we went through recently with our mission, vision, values, one of the major themes that came out was connectedness and bringing people together and having those spaces where people can come together. And I think, when we think about what people want, and different people want different things, I agree with you. I mean, I'm very connected to my digital devices. There's times I do want to put them down, but I probably am using them in the park because it's quiet. And I'm lucky enough, again, that I have accessibility and that there isn't, I think, that digital divide that's out there between those that can afford and those that can't afford. So when we talk about connectedness, when we talk about creating public places that people want to hang out in and come together in, I think when you look at progressive models like providing Wi-Fi in parks on a pilot project, it will definitely set us aside and set us apart from others in Niagara. I can tell you this is an incredibly innovative idea, and once again, I think leading in Niagara is a great thing for us. A lot of other municipalities are doing it, and so I think being a leader in Niagara for a number of reasons, I think does set us apart. But, if I go back to our mission, vision, values, grow, prosper, and belong. And I think about the belonging piece and connecting people and people wanting to hang out in our parks. This to me is one of those fairly easy decisions when it kind of crossed my desk and staff proposed this. So I would leave committee with those comments.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Chambers? Okay, so I have a question, but I'll let Madam Mayor go. You go ahead first.
I really liked Shannon's answer, and I like the question, but I really like the answer as well. I think it's really the answer that I wanted to hear. I want to talk a little bit about procurement, just because I want to understand this process. I don't know who Niagara Wireless Internet Company is. Who are these people? I don't know them.
So I'll put that through to John, please.
Thank you, through you, Ms. Chair. Niagara Wireless Internet Company is a local ISP. They're a last-mile internet reseller. Not everyone in Lincoln is fortunate enough to have a Cogeco or a Rogers or a Bell line that runs through their property, allowing them access to high-speed internet. This is they're similar to a cell phone tower. They have, it's called point to multi-point towers. So you have a tiny little dish on your house that points towards the internet tower, and they're able to deliver the internet to those that don't necessarily have access to wired high speed at their particular residence.
Okay, Madam Chair, that's helpful. If I asked you who this person was that owns this company, would I know them? Okay. So I know this is free, but I just want to understand what the procurement process is, or how we go about vetting something like this when it's being offered free. I'm pretty clear, I think, about what would happen at the end of 3 years. We would be tendering it. So if that could just be explained to me, I just want to make sure that we're not in any kind of conflict situation here. I don't know why we would be. I just want to make sure we're not. So I don't know who would answer that question.
Okay, thank you. So, Shannon, could you please answer that question? Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Chair. I carefully reviewed the recently revised procurement policy, and we do not have anything in that policy which prohibits us from moving forward with the project with a firm who has solicited us.
So, Madam Chair, if I could just ask the CAO then, in regard to his experience, is that the operative word, that they've solicited us?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that is the operative word. I think the fact that someone's come to us, proposed a potential pilot, we haven't done it at all of our park locations. We've selected 2 to pilot, and we've had a clear conversation and a clear understanding that following this pilot, there would be a procurement process that allows us then to go out there to every internet service provider and have them all bid on something, should council decide and direct us to go forward, that would apply to all of our particular parks.
Madam Chair, the purpose of my question is that as we're growing, and we're growing quickly, and we're looking for opportunities, I just want to make sure that we as a council understand very clearly, as we take those steps, what risks we've considered and as well as the benefits, because we will find ourselves in situations where we will want to be really creative in the future and take advantage. So I want to make sure that the baseline steps here start from a very strong position in terms of any procurement or any consideration for services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
And through you, Madam Chair, I think to the Mayor's point, I just did confirm with Sarah, we actually did engage legal on this particular item, and I think Sarah can give you just a quick synopsis of what that legal advice we received on this particular item, because I think we were looking to do our due diligence. We wanted to make sure that, notwithstanding that someone approached us with what sounds like a great opportunity and an innovative opportunity, that we were protecting the town and any recourse that anyone would potentially take.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, we did connect with our legal department, and they did provide staff with the following recommendation regarding the risks for Wi-Fi in our park settings. The greatest risks arise from Wi-Fi are illegal use or inappropriate use of the Wi-Fi, snooping and online activities, and data breaches. Because the town of Lincoln would be a party offering the Wi-Fi through these services which occur, the town would be named in a claim and held liable if there was one. They recommended that if we are to move forward with this pilot project, that the town of Lincoln should have a strong, clearly worded terms of reference that must be agreed to by the individuals seeking access to the Wi-Fi prior to using it, and that it's recommended that the terms of use be agreed on a periodic basis, once a month for instance, and not one time only. So that would be something that we would work on with our IT services manager to make sure that that is a tight agreement that's put up on the agreement page for users.
Thank you, Sarah. So, Councillor McPherson, go ahead.
Madam Chair, just a quick question. So obviously there's got to be something in this for Niagara Wireless Internet Company. So is there advertising rights? Is there signs that are going up in these parks that maybe through you to Mr. Brown, because I'm getting a nod? And I think that we just need to, have that out in the open, that, there is absolutely a gain that this company's going to get out of this, and they should. I mean, if they're providing something for free, but so that we all know that that's fair market, and that we will have advertising in our parks, and I don't know the size of that or whatever. So
okay.
I'll phrase that I'll put that in a question through to the.
So John, what is the provider planning in terms of what will the provider receive in exchange for providing this service?
The answer is yes. There would be advertising that would clearly be part of the agreement that we make. As well, we would be a pilot, so they would be able to sell similar services to other communities that we were the ones that it succeeded in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPherson, it looks like...
Just a quick follow-up. So I expect that there will be numbers and we will get reports with users and that sort of thing, just to get an idea of how popular it is.
So that leads into the question that I had as well, because I was speaking to staff earlier on about this, and there are other, I believe, and I'll let Sarah speak to this, but there are other gains that we could have as a municipality following tracking usage in our parks, et cetera. Can you highlight that a little bit further? I'm sure I'm not explaining it properly.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. It does identify in the report that staff would provide an annual update on the success of the pilot project. One of the reasons that staff is interested in this project is because it's very hard to measure how many people are using our green spaces and our open spaces on a daily basis. There's no way of doing that effectively, and so this does give us a tool to be able to measure how many people are in the park on a daily basis, at what time, how we can expand programming in the park, those types of things. So it's something that we're very interested in terms of data collection for our future expansion of parks.
Feeds into the master plan. Thank you. Carrie, did you want to say something?
Through you, Madam Chair, further to Councillor McPherson's question around advertising, the practice that'll be exhibited through having signage that'll be at the park in lieu of their sponsorship aligns with our advertising and sponsorship policy. We do have, that is a common practice for people who are providing any type of in-kind or sponsorship. Under our policy, they can have signage with agreement with the town.
All right. Any more questions or comments to this report? Can I have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan and seconded by Councillor Timmers that report CM 1810 regarding public Wi-Fi at community parks be received, and that staff be authorized to develop and promote a free public Wi-Fi pilot program at Charles Daly Park and Beamsville Lions Park in partnership with Niagara Wireless Internet Company for a term of 3 years. Comments and questions to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? So that motion is carried. Exciting. So all motions from this evening's meeting will be presented to council for final approval at its meeting of May 7th, 2018. Are there any councillor inquiries? Seeing none, notices of Councillor McPherson.
I thought Councillor Brunet might jump on this, but.
Oh.
So we did have some conversation around the park master plan tonight. And I did hear, I think, that there was an RFP that went out or is going out. So through you to maybe the director or acting director, what's the process? What's the next steps? What's the timeline?
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Madam Chair, yes, the RFP is completed and will be, if it's not on our external procurement site, Badingo at this moment, it will be tomorrow. So that process has started. The closing date is May 23rd. We have already blocked time in the committee's calendar, the committee being the staff committee who's going to review the evaluation, to make quick work of that and come back to this committee with a recommendation to award at the June meeting.
Councillor McPherson?
Thank you, Shannon. So then beyond that, are you thinking a year in master plan process, or help me to understand that a little bit?
Okay, Shannon?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so we have laid out our expectation that the full master plan with all of the deliverables as we've defined them in the RFP will be completed by June 2019. There will be several public information sessions and consultations. I would imagine we will come back with a schedule whereby we bring interim reporting and interim data back, much like we've seen with our economic development strategy and transportation master plans, and that will come out in the proposal responses by the proponents when we have more of their specific details. So the RFP is very comprehensive and very detailed in our expected deliverables, our assumptions, and our timelines.
Good, thank you.
Good, thank you for bringing that up. Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Chair Rinchema. So just to piggyback on that, because yes, we had some discussions this afternoon. I had emailed Mike and had some preliminary discussions with Sarah Ain, but you know, if you look back through you, Chair, to Shannon, if you look back a year ago, June 2017, when we had our community engagement and the survey on the Prokich Park, you know, we had a lot of people that came to us and said, you know, why are you even talking about this, you know, enhancements to Prokich Park, talking about where your skateboard park is, because you haven't done a transportation master plan. So, you know, we've waited a year, so it's a year now, so we're going to invest $220,000. That's great. I'm disappointed it's taken us a year to get it out, but it's coming out. So now it's going to be a year before we get all that data. And, you know, I guess that's a good thing. $220,000 is a big commitment. But what do we tell the residents that were asking us last year about those enhancements? So, you know, do we tell them that we've listened, but it's going to be another 2 years, or what is, you know, what are our talking points as we go into an election year?
So can I jump in? So for councillor inquiries, really just kind of are meant to be simple inquiries, and we should give staff some time to come back with answers. And we've already heard that we're going to be hearing further on this process at the next committee in June. So you're welcome to come out then and ask all the questions then when we have a full report. Thank you, Councillor Brunet. Any more councillor inquiries? None? Announcements? None. We have no closed session. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for these, Carrie. Did you put these all in our mailboxes?